Good morning. So I'm prepping this panel for welding, as you can see here. And I do things a little bit different, maybe a lot different than a lot of people, because this is a hobby. It's not my career, my job, or whatever. And so my boss would fire me probably for spending so much time and doing all this little meticulous stuff. But I'm not doing it for collision, so it's just a different animal. This is my project. This is going to last hopefully for a long time, for the life of the vehicle. So it's the way I do things. So what I'm saying is, this is EDP. It's electro deposited primer, they call it, I think. So it's literally electrically deposited onto this panel. A lot of people will say that stuff's crap. And it likely is crap, depending on where it came from, how it was put on, because some of this is just black primer. You've probably heard this 1,000 times. Take some lacquer thinner, squirt it on the panel, and rub it. If it comes off, which it didn't, you get a clean spot. If it comes off, it's primer. I know that's looking black, but it's not. There, you kind of see that's not coming off. So my advice or opinion is I look this over really good, because there can be fingerprints from them touching the bare metal. There can be little rust bubbles starting to come through. So you can look at the sheen of the primer and you can tell if it's any imperfections, then take that down to metal. But if not, leave it on there, because it's actually, like I talk about weld through primer, it's a better than nothing thing. So what I'm going to do is scuff this. A lot of people, a lot of collision companies basically scuff and shoot this stuff, because it isn't bad stuff. So I'm going to scuff this whole thing down, and you can see I went through here and marked out exactly where the old spot welds were, so I could put it back as close as possible. I don't have a spot weld machine yet, so I'm going to plug weld this. But basically I'm going to take this while it's off the panel, instead of putting it up there and welding it all down and then trying to do this, because then I'd have to be trying to get in this little groove area. I'll just scuff this down real good, that way when I shoot paint on it, it's going to adhere. So I'll put primer first, and then paint or epoxy or whatever you're going to put down. And it's going to stick just fine. And this is going to give you another layer of protection, in my opinion. A lot of people may go, no, you need to take all that off. That's fine. There's a lot of different opinions out there. I'm just telling you what mine is. Like I said, if you see any kind of bubbles or fingerprints or anything, yes, take it down. And this is also an interior panel, let me say that. If you're doing an outer panel, like that one, I will take all of that off, down to bare metal, clean it, and then put my epoxy primer down. I will not do what I'm doing here. This is an inner panel that it's going to be inside the car, you're not going to see it. You don't want anything failing on it. You don't want anything failing, period, but you don't want it failing on the outside, like your paint job. So I wouldn't trust this that much. But I'm going to either Rust-Oleum this, or like I said, epoxy prime it or whatever. And so just scuffing it down with this is going to be plenty fine. So I'll continue to do this until it's all scuffed down. You can see that I've went about an inch wide on each one of these. I know that because if you put a 5/16, it's going to burn about an inch away from burn about an inch of this paint or primer or whatever away. So I pulled it down to metal, and then I'll spray that with weld through primer, just these spots. That also gives it a layer of protection, because if you rip it all the way down to bare metal, all the way down this deal, which is what most people will do, that's fine. They'll just cut this whole thing down. what happens is you have bare metal all the way down through here. So this is more protected than this. And this will be more protected with weld through primer on it than this with just weld through primer on it. So this will be even better. So I hope you see what I'm saying. It's you got 2 layers instead of just 1 layer of weld through primer. And the weld through primer, in my opinion, is just a better than nothing product. Most of it's going to burn away. So I like to go back with a syringe. You guys have seen me do that, and run epoxy back down into the seams. That way it recoats whatever burned away, or hopefully that's the plan. That's the best that I can come up with outside of having a dip tank to dip your whole car in. That's what they do from the factory. That's what they, some professional restoration places have a tank where they dip it, pull the paint off, and then dip it again, and then they dip it in primer, and you got all that. That's great. I think it's thousands and thousands of dollars to do that. That's the best way to do it. We don't have that, so my next best thing is just to try to cover those welds with a syringe and some epoxy. So you can see here, same thing. Each one, take this thing, which is awesome, just make little circles all the way down, and keep the stuff in between. So it's just a little bit more protection. Like this whole section here, a little bit more protected. And then I also don't use as much weld through primer. That's another thing. You're spraying this whole thing weld through primer, you're wasting a lot of it where you're not welding. So I'm just going to hit these little spots and save all these areas here, and then I don't use as much weld through primer. Because I'm buying it, I'm paying for it, and the stuff's expensive, like 40 some dollars a can now. So yeah, just spraying these little spots, that saves me probably quite a bit of money. And like I said, it's better because you've got another layer of protection down there. So once this is all scuffed up, I'll shoot it with weld through primer. I'll weld it together, and then I can come back in and spray whatever I'm gonna epoxy or whatever down and get it all taken care of that way. So anyway, that's my 2 cents on that. I'll bring you back when I get a little bit more. Here's another tip for you, which I'm guilty of this too, or I've been guilty in the past. Only one side of this is going to sandwich between metal that needs to be welded. So you're going to prep your metal and weld through it. Prep this, weld through it. Stop weld throughing the front side. I'm talking to myself too, because I've done it. I'm thinking, man, I just wasted a bunch of primer, because literally I'm gonna paint that. So I gotta take all that weld through, because nothing is gonna stick to this weld through, period. It's just not, it's terrible. So you're wasting product by painting the front of it with weld through. So that's another tip from me to you. A lot of you guys probably already know that. Like I said, I've done it, that's why I'm like, shoot, it is wasted product. So I'll go back over that one more time, and then that's it. So I'm using less weld through primer that way. And if I decide to, which I probably will, paint the inside of this, you got this overspray or whatever, a lot of times I'll mask that off, but it's just, you're using more paper or tape, and it's, it's just more expensive to do it that way. It's cleaner, but yeah, you can take some lacquer thinner and wipe back over that. That stuff comes right off there. A little bit of lacquer thinner. Hopefully you guys are seeing that. That stuff comes right off. Okay. So once I get it welded in, I can just take lacquer thinner and wipe back over this area here. Take that right back off. All right. All right. So I'm just going to show you how I put these in. I weld them in. You can see I've got everything done, prepped, and whatever. A lot of times guys will make circles. Some of them go from the inside out. Some go from the outside in. Don't think that matters. For me on these, because gravity is pulling down, I just weave back and forth all the way to the bottom. And you'll see it gets good penetration. I'll show you all that. But for me, it keeps it flatter so you have less. Because if you do this, it tends to gravity wants to drag that weld puddle down and leaves a big old fat thing on it. So obviously the less grinding, the better. So I've got a light behind us, and I've also got a light on my helmet that I use, but this thing's in the way for it, but helps me see a little better. And I've got this on shade 8. I need to go a little bit darker. That was literally just back, forth, still make the same circle, still everything the same. I'm going each side and working my way out this way. I like to try to go in one direction because I had a guy tell me you tend to bunch the metal up if you jump from one side. Like if I tack the two outsides and then try to go to the middle, you might actually get some warpage towards the middle. This way it kind of irons it out. What else? I scraped the inside of my weld-through primer out because 3M says to do that, and I'm pretty sure 3M's smarter than I am, so I just do what they say. So yeah, I've got a little bit more in here. And that had to be perfect, but and then I keep my air obviously close. That way, if something on the backside decides it wants to catch on fire, I can just reach up there and blow it out. Do that when I'm doing the inside of frames too. I'll stick it in the end of the hole and blow it, and it blows out if anything's trying to burn inside. So try to remember to clip my wire in between each plug weld. And you can see, hopefully you can see that. Each one of those plug welds, like I was telling you, it burns away about an inch. Maybe a little more, but not too bad. And if it burns a little bit of that away, take your Scotch-Brite pad, which I think I have one up here somewhere. Anyway, just scuff that back up like that, and you're good for paint. You don't want to leave that like that or bubbly or burnt or whatever. Just knock it off with Scotch-Brite. So, a little bit of tips from me to you. Hope that helps. A lot of you guys already know this stuff. It's like, why are you repeating the same thing? I get new subscribers. So, you're likely not going to go back and watch 700 videos that I have. And I really, literally have 700 videos. Just like that. And so you see the smoke coming up, maybe you can see that. So just to be safe, I'll kind of blow on the back side of it. And there's my Scotch-Brite pad. So just knock that if it tries to burn away at all, which it's not really. And there you go. That's the way I do those when they're vertical, basically, on my the vertical and horizontal, but you know what I'm saying. I'm not going down at them from the top. Then I make a circle, and I usually start on the outside because I
have my metal bare, so I'll go from the outside and drop down in. Doesn't matter though, like I said, you can do it from, people are like, well, if you hit the inside metal, it's going to penetrate better. Maybe so. I think we're splitting hairs on that, but I could be wrong. Very good likely chance that I am wrong, but what I do is work for me in the back. Like I said, you see the back side of them, they have a great, they had great penetration, so I'm not too concerned about it. One more here. Get that metal as tight as possible. Make sure everything's away from the back side back there so you don't catch something on fire, or wiring, because there's wiring that runs along through there. I'll try to move it back away. So that's it. I'll come back in here and scrape a little bit more of that out. About like that is as good as I'm gonna do. Like I said, there's still some weld through in there, but and yeah, so I know, like I said, you see how far that heat ring goes, so we're good to go. It's not burning into the EDP, or if you had paint there, it wouldn't be burning into that. Paint, it might bubble just a little because it gets a little bit hot, but like I said, just take your Scotch-Brite, go back over that, knock it off real quick, and once I grind just the tip of that off, or the head of that off just a little bit, we're good to go. I can shoot it with epoxy, Krylon, whatever, Rust-Oleum, whatever, and like I said, since I've already scuffed it, I don't have to try to get up in here and scuff it and get up underneath there and all that stuff. I've already done it on the table, so it's ready to go. All right, guys, I hope that helps somebody. We'll talk to you later. All right, that's how it's gonna fit in there. It'll be sucked down tight once it's welded and squeezed together. I left mine a little long right here. I think I said that in the last video, because I'll come in here and scribe a line right next to that, or even take an air saw and just make it a blade's width. But I'm also gonna have to cut this all the way across here. Yeah, I know, right? It's a brand new rocker. It's like, oh no. But we're putting the sliders in, so that's the way it has to be. And the other ones, like I said, I wanted to save them because it's been so much less work, but it just wasn't gonna happen. So they were just too bad off. And I needed to get between these panels because the rust. Everywhere that you have a seam, if you don't seam seal it, you're gonna get rust up in there. It's just gonna find its way up in the little crevice and it's gonna start rusting. And so this will be completely seam sealed everywhere. But what I like to do is, when I can, stuff like this, I'll weld that together, and then I'll come back and, like I said, take a syringe and just inject epoxy back down in there, okay? And then seam seal, say this is down underneath, you won't have to up here, but seam seal it to where it's not gonna get up into that seam. So ultimately this, from the underside, has a gap because I cut that piece off of here. Let me take that off and show you what I'm talking about. All right, so this piece here, I cut that off. It came out and came down to meet this flange. I'll cut that off because I'm gonna have a slider in there. So literally that slider will just fit up in there, tuck up underneath this. And I've got the slider to where it'll, this comes down over the top of the slider. That way water will run off and down. It's fine. I mean, whatever you want to do, I'm just doing it this way because I think it makes a cleaner seam right there. So that's what I'm doing. I don't know what else I want to say about that. So yeah, you can see, like I said, all the little heat marks pretty much on the money, a little bit here, but even still, it didn't burn that back. And I can take a Scotch-Brite pad, red Scotch-Brite, go back over that. So, but that's that. It's in. It's good. And now I've just got to prep this. It looks like they put either galvanized paint or maybe some kind of light galvanizing on this. I will have to strip that down to bare metal. Unless you guys know something I don't, I've actually wiped on this with lacquer thinner and it will not come off. And so you're not going to paint over that either. Now I won't take that off the inside. I'll scuff that up a little bit, probably shoot something over top of it. That way I have a couple of layers of protection in there. But on the outside, yeah, you don't want to paint over galvanized. It's not going to stick. So I'll have to take a DA, the 80 grit probably, and clean that up real good and down to bare metal. But I'll do that another day when I'm got it in there and I'm getting ready to paint it all and all that kind of stuff, so that it doesn't rust in the meantime. So this is a great idea what they've done here. It's the same idea as the EDP primers for shipping. Keeps it from rusting, but this is also probably a better coating than the EDP as far as rust prevention, and it's inside a rocker, which that's what they used to do back in the old days, 60s and 70s. All this stuff was galvanized in here. So, but I'll come back over this, knock these down, just very slight, nothing to knock that down. And I'll come back in and coat it with epoxy or primer and whatever. I'm not sure what I'm gonna do yet on that, but whatever you decide to do, you can use Rust-Oleum, you can use whatever you want. But when it's all said and done, these seams under here will all have seam sealer in them, and so we're not gonna get any more problems for the life of this vehicle anyway. So there you go. You guys have a good one. See ya.